He who is not a Puritan in his youth has no heart. He who is still a Puritan in his maturity has no brain. From an anonymous Inquisitor. Many Inquisitors blaze a unique trail through the galaxy, relying on their own judgment and knowledge to prevail. However, it is in mankind's nature to seek consensus, a common path upon which to proceed, and Inquisitors are no different. At any time, there are scores of different philosophies advocated within the Inquisition, each considered the path of ultimate truth and salvation by their adherents. These are not doctrines, but ideas, tested with every tool at the Inquisitor's disposal. If an Inquisitor adopts one philosophy to the exclusion of all others, it is not because its principles fulfill a religious need, but because he or she has come to embrace its tenets as the ultimate truth required to save humanity. Just as the size of an ordo itself rises and falls, so too does the popularity of each philosophy, with some flaring but briefly and others enduring through the millennia. Though they are often pursued with the tenacity of religious belief, these are theories founded in reason and tested through scientific rigor. Inquisitors are, first and foremost, practical men and women. They do not waste their effort or time on ideas proven to be flights of fancy. These philosophies are often so broad that they cut across the inquisitorial divisions, drawing like-minded inquisitors together from across many ordos. Such groupings are sometimes referred to as factions, but this is erroneous, implying a structure that simply does not exist. All inquisitors are equal in a philosophy's pursuit, even though they might choose different methods to enact their beliefs. Thus, a Thorian who believes that the Emperor's soul can be reborn into a new body of flesh and blood might hail from one of many ordos. Even as an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos seeks alien gene tech to create a new body, a member of the Ordo Malleus might delve into the study of the warp to learn how the Emperor's spirit might be guided into the physical world. Meanwhile, an Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus might contribute their own researches into the legends of the Ecclesiarchy saints who have been resurrected from the dead. However, for each Inquisitor dedicated to such a philosophy, there is always at least one who opposes it as radical folly and seeks to destroy all traces of it. After all, central to the Inquisition's purpose is the credo, trust no one, and this applies as much, or perhaps more greatly so, to one's fellow Inquisitors as any other living being. The Inquisition's members broadly adhere to two very different schools of thought about their ultimate purpose and the methods to be used in pursuit of that purpose, that of the radical and that of the Puritan. To the radical, the ends justifies the means in every instance, whether through the employ of exterminatus, demon hosts, or alien weaponry. By contrast, the Puritans adhere strictly to official imperial political and religious doctrine, and typically persecute their more unorthodox brethren when given the chance, as they are most concerned with maintaining the Imperium status quo, even if this results in simply perpetuating the long period of technological and cultural stagnation that has afflicted humanity for much of the time since the end of the Horus Heresy over 10 millennia ago. I will now go into much more detail, I will start off with the Puritans. Puritans more or less believe the imperial creed as it is handed down to the Imperium citizens. The Emperor is a god. The dark forces of the warp are unutterably evil, and mutants, heretics, and witches must not be tolerated. Furthermore, they tend to believe in maintaining the status quo of the Imperium, since it is the instrument of the Emperor's will, no matter how poorly flawed mortals have implemented that will. Puritans are mostly young and full of fire, eager to prove themselves to their peers and their Emperor by hunting down humanity's traditional foes and preserving the stability of the Imperium. Many acolytes also share this zeal, particularly as they are often at the sharp end of any engagement with cultists, mutants, and other such scum. Even if they do not entirely agree with this view of the Imperium, an Inquisitor will often encourage Puritan ideals within their servants, knowing that this will help them expedite the task of rooting out corruption with great gusto. Here are some of the most known Puritan factions, starting off with the most well-known one, Tyranids. Born of the fire and ruin of the Age of Apostasy in the 36th millennium, the Thorian Inquisitors are a Puritan faction who believe that the will of the Emperor can manifest in the hearts of pure individuals, and in times of great need, his avatar will appear to vanquish the foes of humanity. They take their name from the great prophet and reforming religious leader of the 36th millennium, the Ecclesiarch Sebastian Thor, who, during that dark time, led the movement against corruption within the imperial cult, and was ultimately responsible for its cleansing and the restoration of the Imperium that followed. This is the most radical of the Puritan ideologies, due to the possible galactic upheaval that could result should the Thorians actually be able to summon the Emperor into a new physical form, as believers and unbelievers in the reborn Emperor's divinity and identity might then turn upon each other. Then we have Mono-Dominance. Next to the Thorians, the Mono-Dominants are counted among the most powerful of the inquisitorial factions. Certainly, this Puritan faction is believed to be the oldest, tracing its origins back to the 33rd millennium. Mono-Dominants are the most hard-line of all the Puritans, believing in the complete destruction of all non-humans, including those they consider inhuman, such as mutants and psykers, and those not willing to swear eternal allegiance to the Emperor. Of course, they understand that this lofty goal will take time, and in the interim, though they might despise them, the Imperium must make use of mutants and psykers for its own survival. Mono-Dominants are also well known for their excessive use of force when purging corrupted worlds, even resorting to exterminatus rather than risk leaving even the barest hint of heresy behind. Then, Amalathianism, the conservative philosophy that dominates the Puritan faction of the Inquisition. An Amalathian advocates for unity between imperial organizations in the pursuit of the Emperor's will, and for a lack of tumultuous social and political change to maintain the imperial status quo. The Amalathians are thus the currently largest sect within the Inquisition. Their inquisitors oppose the Inquisition's division into political and philosophical factions and sects. Ironically, their idealism marks them as their own faction in the Inquisition. It was at the birth of this philosophy, on the world of Gathalamor at Mount Amalath, that Lord Solar Macarius was spurred on to his grand conquest of nearly 1,000 new worlds for the Imperium during what became known as the Macarian Crusade. Then we have the Anomolian Beholders. While other incarnationist inquisitors like the Thorians believe that it is their duty to bring about the rebirth of the Emperor incarnate, the Anomolian Beholders believe that such thoughts skirt with hubris and heresy. Instead, they are perhaps the most conservative of all the incarnationist factions. Their goal being not to create the Emperor incarnate, but to observe humanity and await his arrival. They see it as their job to prepare for this momentous event and to stand ready to offer whatever assistance may be needed at that great time. The predominant activity of the Anomolian Beholders is locating potential divine avatars who can serve as the physical vessel of the Emperor reborn and observing them. Only if they are convinced that the vessel is tainted will they destroy it. Much like the original Thorians, they are content to examine and research remarkable individuals for signs of potential or corruption. They are more zealous than most to follow up any sign or omen of a possible divine avatar, and are amongst some of the most traveled inquisitors in the galaxy. Anomolian Beholders tend to be pragmatic, down-to-earth individuals, after a lifetime of seeking wisdom and enlightenment, only to have their hopes thwarted time and again. They tend to take a longer view of matters, and despite numerous setbacks to achieving their goals, are always optimistic that the future may hold the answers. This has garnered them a reputation for being level-headed and reliable, and other inquisitors will often happily overlook their foibles in return for these better qualities. Then, Ardentism. Though not truly following a philosophy of resurrectionism or incarnationism, the Ardentides are best discussed alongside such factions that do like the Thorians. Their somewhat quirky belief is not widespread amongst the members of the Inquisition, but had been persistent in various guises for several millennia, either within the broader Thorian ideals or as a distinct faction in its own right. The Ardentides firmly believe in the basic principles of the Emperor incarnate, in which the Emperor can be brought back to play an actual physical role in human life once more. But there, the similarity with the Thorians end. Rather than a single divine avatar who will serve as a physical vessel for the reincarnated Emperor, the Ardentides feel it is more likely that the power of the God Emperor is likely to manifest through a group of people, or more likely, the entirety of mankind. Given humanity's evolution towards being a psychic species, evidenced by a gradual but perceptible increase in mutation and psychic ability, it is the belief of the Ardentides that the ultimate plan of the Emperor to protect mankind during this vulnerable stage was to disseminate his power throughout humanity. And so it is that the Ardentides do not concern themselves merely with remarkable individuals who may be a divine avatar, but rather attempt to locate evidence of the Emperor's presence in any person, expressing proof of exceptional talent or psychic ability. This is a vague, unsure process, for none can say what defines evidence of the Emperor's presence, though certainly there is no end of accounts of miraculous events that might be accounted for by intervention by the Emperor. Known sometimes by the rather derogatory title of miracle chasers, much of the disdain for Ardentides stems from the erratic behavior of Inquisitor Varagian Thex, who spent 2 standard centuries during the 39th millennium attempting to prove the Ardentide theorems. but was unable to produce a shred of evidence. Having presented his findings at a conclave of his fellow Inquisitors, he was censored for dereliction of duty, for devoting time and resources to his baseless beliefs. It is perhaps this defiance of defeat and the rebellious streak that still characterizes many Ardentites. They are widely regarded as eccentric individuals who seek the work of the Emperor everywhere, but they also make great investigators, for they will often delve deeper and for longer than others, unwilling to make obvious conclusions from their discoveries, but to seek inner meanings and hidden motives in what they encounter.